So with that, Commissioners, we're at the discussion phase of our workshop. Staff and various speakers are here to answer questions if you have any.
Okay, I'm going to start. And first of all, we clarified at the beginning of the meeting, but still a lot of speakers pointing the finger at us that we have to make a decision. And we clarified that we can't make a decision. We can make a recommendation to the department. Director Bonham explained earlier that the department and this commission have a really good relationship. It's probably as good, if not the best, since I've been around. And I'm sure that whatever recommendation we make to the department will be considered very strongly, as he had reiterated earlier. I'm going to surprise some people, probably. Caitlin Jackson and Karen Garrison aren't even here anymore, but knowing them like I do, they'll be watching it, if not now, later on. And Eric Endersby, I think you said it best. I've been involved in this MLPA process from the beginning, and I fought hard throughout the process to get the best deal I could for the fishermen. And ultimately, we've got some great marine protected areas up and down our coast now, and I got the best deal in my fight that I could get out of it for the fishermen. And now we've got marine protected areas that if not as equal, I'll be the strongest advocate to keep protecting now that they're in place. This is not about PG&E. If it was one or the other, if it was another nuclear power plant, it would be Southern California Edison or Simple Energy or whoever it is. It's about whoever happens to be involved in this deal. We told or asked PG&E at the last commission meeting that they would go as far as to do a worldwide search to try to find another technology to do this study other than what they're doing. And they told me in private, I mentioned the bubbles that worked with the pile driving and those kind of things, and they said that's not going to work in this deal. But you know, the United States doesn't have a monopoly on technology, and until you do a worldwide search of different types of technology that are out there, we don't know if it's a better technology or not. It's kind of, I mean, some of the best doctors in this country come from India and other countries. And so we don't have a monopoly on any one thing in this world other than I better not say that. But anyhow, it's a marine life protected area. It's not a marine life killing area. And as long as I'm here, we're not going to recommend to the department anything that's killing what we're trying to protect. I complained during the process that we were picking the best fishing areas, taking away from the fishermen the best fishing areas when we set these areas up. And the response from y'all and everybody else was, that's going to grow more fish to come outside of the areas for the fishermen to participate in. Well, that's not going to happen if we allow this type of thing to go on. So that being said, I'm ready to hear from my fellow commissioners.
Mr. President, if I may, if you don't mind,
Commissioner
Sutton,
Rogers,
you can
and then Commissioner Sutton.
drag up the rear there. You're used to that. Thank you, Mr. President. A number of things. First of all, I would like to really reiterate my appreciation of state lands and the California Coastal Commission for their significant participation with the department and with the commission staff here over the last couple of weeks. It's been very appreciated. The dialogues have been very intense and in depth, and we think that we're getting their best thinking at this point in time. And I encourage them to proceed, both of those institutions, particularly the California Coastal Commission, because they are in a decision loop as we speak. I encourage them to proceed with caution, that any uncertainty of this magnitude is a very dangerous thing. And so if and I know that the California Coastal Commission appreciates that, and I think they need to proceed with caution. I don't have to tell them that. I'm sure they know that themselves. There was another thing that wasn't brought up today that I had heard in a presentation to this commission and in the State Land Commission, although I was not there. PG&E made a representation that they had planned about $1.2 million worth, at least, worth of mitigation to the local fishermen, and to engage them in doing activities and things of this nature. From what I understand, they've pulled back on that and faded on that presentation they made to us and made to state lands. I'm disturbed by that, and I would like to know more about why PG&E has done that. Because if that's true, that's leaving not only those who are on the consumptive end of the ocean resources in that area, but also those, in addition to them, who are on the non-consumptive end of that. Apparently, we're going to get a comment here. Good. I'm glad to hear that, because that was rather disturbing to hear that. And I would also encourage those of you who are here, remembering that we are not going to be the ones that the Coastal Commission has to issue a permit. The department issues a different sort of a scientific take, but the next step here is the Coastal Commission. Thank you for showing up here, and thank you for being so passionate, which is always a wonderful thing to see. When people speak with their hearts as well as their minds, which is useful. That is a very good thing, and I'm really glad that you guys are here. You're eloquent, and you're needed in these environments. Thank you very much for doing that. Do that with the Coastal Commission. Please do that. They're going to be meeting. They're going to be meeting after our next meeting, which is a week from tomorrow, a day after tomorrow in this chamber. Meet with them. Make sure you do. And then the only advice I would have for the department is to take your time, as I know you will, and I would recommend seeing letting the Coastal Commission do their work and seeing what our needs to look like vis-a-vis what I'm sure that's what you're going to do anyway, Chuck. But those are the only comments I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to be in agreement with you. A rare pleasure, but one I enjoy. Like my fellow commissioners, I've seen nothing in our deliberations over this project to convince me that this program is either advisable or necessary. And I can't make a recommendation to the department I can't, in good conscience, make a recommendation to the department that you issue the permit. I think it's telling, for one thing, that PG&E itself originally opposed the passage of the state law that now requires them to conduct these studies. it's important to recognize that this is not the Navy sonar issue. Several people have raised that. This is a very different issue. Maybe not different to marine mammals, but certainly different from a legal perspective. Keep in mind, 2008, the Supreme Court ruled that Navy sonar exercises could proceed despite the killing of marine mammals because national security trumped marine mammal protection. That is not the case here. We are not talking about, there's no court that I know of has made the decision that nuclear safety trumps marine mammal protection. And I'm not convinced that in this case nuclear safety would be advanced, as some people have alluded to. So about the only potentially significant outcome or useful outcome I could see from this project, Mr. President, is that it might give us sufficient information that the seismic risk is so great that the plant can be decommissioned. And that might be a useful outcome indeed.
Okay, let's hear from our gentleman from PG&E on Richard's question, and then I just want to remind everybody one more time that if we weren't concerned and caring, we wouldn't have provided this opportunity for you to tell us how you feel. So, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Honorable Commissioners. My name is Chris Bardis with PG&E. And in answer to Commissioner Rogers' question in regards to the proposed compensation to the fishers, PG&E has not rescinded the $1.2 million upfront offer that's been provided to the local fishers. That offer still stands. In addition, PG&E has offered a expedited claims process that will be managed out of the San Luis Obispo County region, recognizing that with the $1.2 million that would be provided up front, for many of the commercial fishers, that likely would more than compensate them for the potential loss of fishing opportunities, being that they would be restricted from either Box 4 or 2 if that were to be actively surveyed, and secondly, just the general disruption of potential activities during that time. But with the claims process, that if certain fishers were able to show, based on their fish tickets and other information, that the damages or loss that they incurred are greater than their proportional share of the $1.2 million, PG&E would work with them to provide additional compensation to make up for their losses. I'm here today also to ask if you have any more questions regarding the proposed monitoring programs that we developed. I'm happy to any questions that you may have with those also.
If I may, Mr. President, continue on with that. Yeah, while you're here. Mm-hmm. May I, Mr. President, continue with this? Now that you're, thank you for being here. That's not the story I'm hearing from the fishermen, and I talk to them frequently.
Okay.
So you may have a communications issue with them, or I don't think they're lying to me because they know I can find out. And I know you're not, so there must be, I'm assuming you're not, so there must be some sort of a communications problem. And something else. Your claims process was characterized by me as going to an office somewhere near Atascadero, which handles regular complaints about your electrical service. Is that true?
It would be housed out of our office located in Templeton. I think the person that manages that claims process manages other claims processes as well, but this one would be focused strictly on the fishers, recognizing that they have specific issues that are unique as opposed to the standard claims that are proposed or filed with PG&E.
Okay, that'll need a little bit more expansion. I, for one, echoing the President's remark, and I'm sure the sympathies of my fellow commissioner, in addition to the President, we worked very hard. I personally put in 8 years of 2-3 days a week establishing these MPAs to return California to the sustainable abundance that it once enjoyed. A lot of people who were in this room who were commercial fishermen and recreational fishermen gave a piece of themselves to that for the better good, for the long-term better good. They knew that they would take a short-term hit, but they were hoping that we were right and that in the long term it would work out. And I think it would be cruel to take a no-take area, which is the MPAs, and to damage that no-take area with take, in addition to damaging the take area so that they can't fish in the MPAs. You're damaging potentially, all potential, you're damaging potentially the no-take areas. You see where I'm going with this? This is a kind of they can't fish in the MPAs, and I've already heard, now granted this is completely anecdotal, I spent an hour with a commercial fisherman on Friday on the telephone. He told me that the low power imaging had already cost all the guys in the Morro Bay area 50% of their catch. That's what he told me on Friday. So what I'm suggesting to you is there's a big communications problem here. It's not a veracity problem with me. I believe that you guys are trying to do the right thing. I'm thinking that there needs to be much more intense communications, and I'm also suggesting to you that this commission is watching.
Can I respond to that, sir?
Please do.
So, first of all, I think we can improve our communications, and we need to do so. One of the key things that was prescribed to us by the California State Lands Commission as part of the final EIR is preparation and implementation of a detailed communication plan. That plan is being developed. It's more specifically tailored for communication during the seismic survey. Nonetheless, we do need to improve our communications with the local fishers and the community. PG&E as a whole, and personally myself, we care very much about the economy of the county, and we care very much about the welfare of the fishers. We've offered upfront compensation. We've developed the claims process so that if their loss were to be greater than the upfront compensation that they received, PG&E will provide additional compensation to make them whole.
Oh, please do, but what I'm telling you is that's not the story that's being fed back to us.
I understand. The other thing, if it's okay, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the monitoring program. So there's several monitoring programs that have been developed in coordination with all the different agencies. This includes the harbor porpoise monitoring program that was discussed. That will involve aerial surveys up front, baseline surveys, to look at the distribution and density of harbor porpoises. Secondly, that will involve the installation of two devices, hydrophones that record background sound levels both before, during, and after the seismic survey, as well as C-pods that will record echolocation clicks of the harbor porpoises to determine whether there is a change in the level of clicks based on whether they migrate out of the area in large numbers. Second, that will all be done by NIMS staff. We've already provided upfront monies for them already to buy that equipment. We agreed to provide funding for them to carry out that harbor porpoise monitoring program. Secondly, the aerial surveys that would be conducted, both for large cetaceans as well as for harbor porpoises or dolphins, those would also be carried out by National Marine Fisheries Service. PG&E has agreed that we will pay them to carry out those surveys. Secondly, the sea otter monitoring program, we've already provided funding for Fish and Game and USGS to procure the necessary equipment and to fund and provide monies for them to actually carry out that monitoring program. With respect to monitoring of fishes and invertebrates and seafloor habitat, we've agreed to, I would argue, approximately a $4 million monitoring program that involves about $1.5 million worth of funding for ROV surveys that would be conducted before, during, and after the seismic survey this year, additional funding for before, during, after next year if it were to go forward again next year, and additional monitoring in subsequent years. In addition, we've agreed to provide funding to Cal Poly and Moss Landing Marine Laboratories to continue the catch per unit effort sampling, recognizing that would be conducted before, during, and after this year, before, during, after next year, and all the way through 2016 or 2017. In addition, we've agreed to provide monies for commercial trap for benthic fishes that would not be reflected in the catch per unit effort sampling. And those activities actually would be done using the commercial fishermen as contractors as part of that program. All that information would be collected by those different parties. It would be disseminated to the different agencies, and conclusions and analysis would be drawn from that data. And based on the results of that data, they would be presented to you with direction to PG&E if there's any short or long-term impacts on discussions on how to mitigate for those impacts.
Thank you.
Mr. President, if you would, I can kind of, I want to summarize a few things just to bring kind of closure to our meeting, if that's all right.
Okay. We're done with public speakers.
We're not taking any more speakers.
Mr. Rogers asked that same
He didn't
question
ask
to
you.
fishermen.
We're done with public speakers. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. We're done with testimony unless it's asked for.
Bagley King.
I could clarify you that the communication with Fisher
No.
by PG&E regarding the mitigation.
We're not going to get into a he said, she said thing. Thank you. What I would like to, in an attempt to kind of summarize some issues that have been presented to you and possible next steps, since you did go through the effort to hold this hearing, is one, as I've heard here, a situation that was unfortunate, and clearly we don't want to find ourselves in this kind of a place again. So your staff, myself, and working with the department and the other agencies, this is the first time I've ever been to a commission meeting with this many other agencies, state and federal, in attendance, and it was kind of refreshing, particularly given the complexity of these kind of projects. So one, we're going to work on making sure we don't end up here at the 11th inning for the first time on something this important. Two, the department came to you with a draft scientific collecting permit and did a presentation, and I wasn't sure if the commission, putting aside whether one should be issued or not, which is something the director will have to struggle with, were there any recommendations from the commissioners based on what you heard about the terms of the collecting permit that the director might need to know about? I didn't really hear any, and maybe there aren't any. All right, so it sounds like a approval of at least the terms and conditions in the scientific collecting permit. The other thing the commission could do is direct its staff to talk to the other agencies and even attend the Coastal Commission meeting on October 10th to express any of these concerns to them directly if you would like. That's another option before you as a result of this, just to kind of give you some options.
So directed.
Okay, I'll pass.
Mr. President, I also like the suggestion that the department has been doing, continue to develop permit conditions that minimize the impact of any project that PG&E may conduct on the Marine Reserve involved. I like the effort. I mean, I think the state has done a good job of trying to, contain this effort. It would be better if it didn't happen at all, but if it has to happen, the more constrained it can be made, the better. And I think that's the spirit of the permit conditions so far.
If I may.
Commissioner Rogers.
Just so that the only thing that I would say is to echo, I think, your concerns, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chuck, but your concerns to make certain that you are in a position, given the extent to which you can be with that permit, to if a crime scene, so to speak, does develop, that you do have a protocol to be able to just shut that down, and I'm comfortable with your sense of comfort in that.
Okay, Stonk.
At this point, if the director has any comments, I think we're done. Unless the commissioners have any other direction. Chuck?
Move we adjourn.
Thank you.